name is Simone Norberg and I am a fiction filmmaker from Sweden, and I am the director of a short film that's called Bad Lesbian. The film is mainly about when you have the feeling of being in a young age but still have to decide very early who you are because of other people's opinions and expectations. Like the whole idea actually came from when I made a documentary assignment in film school, because I went to film university at that time, and I made this essay project when I gathered my close group of friends from college and asked them about how they experienced how we used to speak about sexuality and identity back then at college, 10 years ago. And most of them were straight and some of us were not, but I always experienced this. The straight majority decided how we were supposed to speak about relationships and stuff related to it. And an effect of it made other sexualities a bit invisible, even though that was nobody's intention, of course. And in the end, I just realized that everybody had their own struggle in different ways back then. When you're 17, you have these feelings of being misunderstood. Through this essay project, I sort of fell in love with the subject of trying to remember these feelings and wanted to make some kind of fiction of it. And this feeling is quite difficult to define, I think, but I knew it had something to do when you are young and you have to deal with these expectations. And it was important to me to speak about identity and sexuality in a quite unproblematic way, because the main character in Bad Lesbian, she is quite sure of who she is, but it's the world around her that wants to label her or question her. And that's just my reflection of, at least in Sweden, a climate on identity, how we people are very obsessed with deciding who they are and who other people are and in an early age, instead of just if you have the possibility, of course, be who you want to be and be free, and you can always change, My favorite part was to work with the actors, because it's such a special thing to get to know people while working with them, and you have this aim together and still having just a great time on set, I got to know a lot of very important persons that I'm still working with them today. It was important to me to depict someone a bit, at least, in charge of her own feelings, but she gets distracted from the world around her, rather than making a film about a very doubting young queer girl who doesn't know what to do at all. There are a lot of queer stories on topics of struggles of coming out, perhaps, or someone being punished for being brave, or there are very dark stories, of course, reflections on the real world, sadly. But I think my creative ambition and interest is to describe the smaller conflicts, maybe in the everyday life, and I'm in general very curious of how does this friend relationship affect by this little thing that happened, the small happenings that are feel very huge when you are young. In one way, I don't think a film has very much political power, I don't think if a single film could change the world or anything, and that's not my goals with making films. But of course, one single film could make a very huge and incredible, it could have a lot of power in terms of a personal experience of watching a film. Yeah, especially if you watch it for the first time, I think, because when you're young, those impressions are even more important, I think, to see yourself in media. But I also believe that it's very likely to feel that identification in a story that doesn't reflect on exactly who you are or how you look like. Like, for example, I don't know, I could like read a book that's 200 years old on the subject love, and written by a man in, I don't know, England. And I can still feel that like super excited feeling of recognition and like, this is me, and I have all these feelings, and yeah. And I think that's because it's in the end, it's all about like human experiences and feelings. And I think that like utopia thing would rather solve the problem of this broader spectrum of public stories, and maybe not by like forcing the one who is making films right now to try to please everyone. Yeah, to sum it up, I think like the biggest problem isn't really what kind of representation is being seen today. It's maybe an issue on who's making all the films, like who's behind the camera will reflect on what you see in the film. I would be very happy if you want to see my film, Bad Lesbian, and you can find all the information at the Cinema Queer México social media pages.